Yo, what is up, guys? We are in week 3 of our January series of the buyer's perspective. This month, we're covering email communication as it relates to you as the sales rep and the buyer at the retailer chain. So, what I would recommend before we get going is if you have not checked out episode 1 and 2, that is covering the basics of some of the email communication. So, covering your subject line and your body of the email and how you can craft those in a way that will make it easier for the buyer to open up and respond to you. So, before we get into this, make sure to pause this if you have not seen those, go check them out, and then come back to this. All right. So, as we get into this week, this theme of emails, the natural thing after you actually send the email, you have a good subject line, you have a really clear and concise email with an ask that's very direct or understanding of the buyer. The next logical step here is follow up. And follow up is tricky because it really requires a certain standard for both sides, really. But we're going to focus on the sales rep side because I want to help you control the controllable. You can control your actions and your standard. You can't necessarily control the buyers. So, we're going to focus on what you can do to get a clean follow up, not take things personally, and make sure that you are consistent. And also just being a good partner in that way with making sure it's not pressuring, but really just looking to partner and make sure that you're not adding pressure that will really cause tension between you and the buyer. So, the first thing I want to acknowledge is the fact that buyers have a lot going on. I think we all know this, but really, when you break it down, there is so much that is happening in the buyer's world, and they have their hands in so much of the life cycle or the process of how an item gets on the shelf, how it gets merchandised, how it gets priced and promoted, how it gets communicated to stores and to the customer, like all these different things that really happen throughout a life cycle of an item. The buyer has their hands in. So we have to just take a second and recognize that whether we like it or not, the buyer has too much on their plate for them to always answer your email the first time. Okay, so the thing that we are going to cover today is really about the emotional piece of it, and I talk about operational friction, but this is more about emotional friction. And when there's a mismatch of what's going on with you and the buyer, that can cause emotional friction. And where you might, as a sales rep, you might be thinking, it's personal, like the buyer's not getting back to me, and you start maybe writing your messages a little bit differently and you start sounding a little pushy or there's pressure there. That's going to cause tension really quick. And I've seen it happen before. I've been on the receiving side of this. People will just flat out blame the buyer for things. They'll, take a really strong emotional stance. Like they will call it out that it's like a personal thing. And that really just makes it difficult for a strong relationship moving forward. Um, and it's not to say that, I honestly think that there is room or there should be room between a buyer and a sales rep in a strong relationship to be able to call each other out, but in a respectful way. And I think that's the big difference here is that you have to make sure that what you are doing is in a respectful way. And you can definitely call somebody out on their shit if you feel like it is really necessary. I would caution about like that timeline of like when do you think it really is necessary, because there's going to be somewhat of a normal lag between your email and a buyer response. And then when that starts extending, you might start getting into that like frustrated phase. And that might be a point when you just feel so frustrated, you have to approach them in a different way. Just make sure that you're respectful with it. That's my only thing that I would say with that is you can call us out, but and I think it's welcomed for the most part, but you got to do it in a respectful way. Otherwise, you're going to be creating that emotional friction and that really a lot of tension in the relationship, and that could cause other things down the road. It could be Maybe they take even longer to respond to you, or the replies that they do respond are shorter and they don't give you a lot of time a day, or maybe they even just stop connecting with you altogether. So you got to be really careful about this line that you're towing, um, and just understand that there is a time and place when you need to call them out, but otherwise, it is very important to just be consistent with your tone and feeling supportive, not pressuring. So, the one thing I would like to say, just to the key point of all of this, is when you are being consistent and you can hold the standard of that, you are going to be setting yourself up for better relationship overall. And you will, over time, start getting a better response rate. It just takes a little bit of time to build that relationship strong enough. And what I would say is the best thing you could do here is, like, pro tip is, when you are doing follow up, always include one kind of like acknowledgement statement. And that could be something like, "Hey, I know you got a lot on your plate right now," or, "Hey, I know Expo West is coming up. I don't want to pull you away from all those priorities, but I do need an answer on this." Or, "Hey, I know you're doing this XYZ category review." Whatever it is, you can have this opportunity to make an acknowledgement statement that will be empathetic to their situation, and it will let them be in a better place, in a better mindset to actually respond to you and give you the information that you need. So, one thing I would just suggest, as you are going through this week and you're sending follow ups, take a second before you hit send and read through it really quick and ask yourself, does it make the buyer feel like they are supported, or are they pressured? And bonus, if you can, insert that acknowledgement phrase right at the beginning or statement, then you're going to be setting yourself up a lot better as you hit send on that email. All right, guys, that's it for this one. Next week, we'll talk about how consistency and creating a system to your follow up will actually build trust over time and why that is. So make sure to follow along. If you are not subscribed yet, make sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss a beat. And I will catch you next week.